In this video, we're going to look at unexpected customer or supplier account balances. Whilst we will be dealing with the supplier side, the same principle will apply for customers. If using the recording of bills on Liberty accounts, the normal practice would be to add the bill on the system. When you add the bill for supplier, you will say what account you're applying this cost to. So in this case, we'll select telephone and email. We'll then specify the amount, and for our not-for-profit users, they'll also, as a minimum, define the fund. We'll then save this item. In this application, the system has now learned that telephone and email is associated with the phone company. And we can see this if we look at the accounts, suppliers, and learned accounts. So there we have it. It's learned the one possible account for this particular supplier is telephone and email. We can also manually add any other learned accounts if we wish, but the system will learn as you go along. When you make a payment on that account, so we'll now go to pay bills, it's listing who we owe monies to, and we'll select the supplier. And we will record the payment of the bill, and we'll click submit. That has now been recorded, and if I look at the supplier ledger, I can look at the phone company and I will see the bill and I will also see the payment. The tripod indicates the matching transaction, so if I click on the tripod, I can see it's related to this particular payment. If I've misallocated for any particular reason, I can deallocate. But in this simple example, this is absolutely fine. Well, what if we make a payment that isn't associated with a bill? Now, this may be appropriate, but it may also be incorrect. So what we're going to do here is record it as a payment on account, essentially. So I'm going to record to the phone company, and I'm going to add it, but not to the telephone and email account, but rather to the supplier account itself, the phone company PLC. We'll enter in the amount and we'll now save. Now, if this is a payment on account, that is perfectly acceptable and there's absolutely nothing wrong. However, if we look at the supplier account balances, we'll notice that we have a negative value here on the supplier account. Now, in some cases, if you've recorded the transaction incorrectly, then this will occur. So maybe what the situation was not a payment on account, but simply the recording of a payment to the phone company, and I actually wanted to record it against the expense account and not the supplier account as a payment on account. Again, I can view the ledger. Here's the transaction, which is a payment that I've recorded. And what I want to do is correct this. It wasn't a payment on account, and it should have been reflected against the expense account. So there's no associated bill. All I'm doing is analyzing the payment directly to the expense account. So I use analyze, I type in the account that is applicable, and I now have to specify for our not-for-profit users the fund that it's going to be applied to, and then I click submit. This transaction no longer flows through the supplier account. Only bills and the payment of those bills will do so. The transaction is between the bank and the expense account. So how do I see the expenses by supplier? Well, underneath the reports, my income and expense report, if I look at the expenses by supplier, and here we'll pick up the phone company, the expense report will show both the bill and then the payment. This isn't the payment of the bill, this is the payment directly to the telephone and email account. But coming back to an earlier point, the system has actually learned that the supplier account is a potential account that we want to apply our expense to. If this is wrong, then what I need to do is look at the supplier Again, note now that the supplier account balance is nil, so there's nothing owing to the supplier. But what I want to do is look at learned accounts and say the phone company isn't an account that we want to record against, so I'm going to delete that learned account. So we've now corrected our supplier account balances by modifying that transaction, because in this case it wasn't a payment on account, and we now have positive account balances. And that's generally what you should be looking for, positive account balances, unless you've made a payment on account and there will be a bill raised in the future. So that's how you correct any payments recorded which should have been applied directly to the expense account as opposed to a payment on account. Please contact us for further information on this and any other features of Liberty Accounts.